Okay. I'm not used to being out here. You know, they keep me chained up back there. Don't let him fool you. My name is Angie. Most of you probably have heard Pastor say my name. Most of you had no idea who I was. And this is me. My family's not here, but I know they're probably watching online, and I have some family and friends watching online. The easiest way to put it is kind of like the Wizard and the Wizard of Oz. I just have a wall, not a curtain, that covers me. I have worked in the video department for probably about 17 years. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it's close to that. I have been the video director for about 15 years. I got started in the video department because a friend of mine named Diane came up to me before a service and said, "Can you work camera? I don't have a camera person." And I said, "Sure." And she showed me how to work the camera. Never worked a camera like that before in my life. And it was a guest speaker who was speaking. They jumped off the stage, jumped on a chair, and jumped over to other chairs. And I'm like, okay, I did not catch them. She promised me that it was just a fluke and it doesn't happen all the time. And she was right, it didn't. And I guess it didn't scare me too much because I've been doing this for 17 years. I want to talk tonight about how I came to this church, how the church has blessed me, and how the Lord has blessed me so much. I need to go back to how I started to come to Walk on the Water Faith Church. I was raised a Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school. I went to a Catholic high school. I lived in St. Louis. My brother, Chris, moved down here with my dad, and I was about 21 when I moved down. I told my dad I could not do the work I was doing anymore, and he said, "Well, come on down, we'll find something different." So I knew God. I knew of God. I never knew the relationship part of God. I didn't understand that part. If the way I took, and not all Catholics will take it this way, but the way I took it, I do something wrong, God was going to thump me. And that's just the mentality I had. So there's my niece. So I went to a friend's house, and she lived in Marysville, Kansas, and it was Assembly of God. The pastor was actually raised Catholic, I believe, and he did Assembly of God, but it was probably more of a non-denominational. And that is when I realized there was more to this God thing than what I knew. But I always had God in my life. Many things throughout my life, I knew there was a God. And I knew he loved me. I just didn't know how to reach out to get that. So I tried to find different churches. I would pass one church, and it was Assembly of God. I actually went to the one near my house, and it wasn't a bad church. I just didn't feel like welcomed, or it was it, because it wasn't. And then I tried to go to another one, and that one, every time I tried to get the times of their service, the light on their billboard was always off. And so I couldn't see it. But Sherry, the best sister-in-law anyone could have, and my best friend, got into real estate. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with anything? When she got into real estate, she had to work every other weekend. So her mom took Christopher and Michaela one weekend, and then Sherry was home with them, and then I would have them one weekend. So I had them at least, every month. I mean, work, someone would say, "What are you doing tonight?" And I would say, "Oh, I'm getting my kids." And of course, they're thinking I have kids, but they weren't mine. But, but it was the best thing ever. I mean, just the best thing ever to be able to spend that time. I don't have kids of my own, and they are my kids. Chris and Sherry's, all of them. Dana, Michaela, Christopher, they're my kids. I would take them to skee ball, 10-cent skee ball, the best entertainment ever, ever. $5 when they were littler, $5 would last the whole day. And then we would go home and they would have all those wonderful little gifts you could pick out and stuff. And Chris would look at them and say, "Really? Why don't you guys save your tickets?" Just so you know, the skee ball place closed down. I have probably, 6,000 tickets that they saved and never got anything from. Far. I really think I'm going to give them as Christmas presents pretty soon. We would go swimming. They would try to drown me, but I did make it through. I was never so glad when Chris would scream down and say, "Hey, it's dinner." And I'm like, "Yes, I can get out of this water." But anyway, so every time I would take the kids home, we'd get done eating dinner, Chris would always say, and by the way, he is my younger brother. If he was here, he would have probably screamed that by now. He would always invite me to church because Chris and Sherry went to WOW. Sherry was the first one, and then she actually got Chris to come, and the rest is history. So I would always say yes. I always say yes. I would come that next Sunday, but then the following Sunday when I didn't have the kids, I wouldn't come. I would just come when they asked. And so I think it was Sherry, it could have been Chris, but I really think it was Sherry who asked me, "Why don't you just go to WOW?" Well, let me tell you what, the devil can put a lot of things in your head, and my reason to him is, or her, is I don't want to be known as Chris's sister. Now, a lot of you might be going, "You are related to Chris?" Chris is the one that owns the butcher shop. That is my baby brother. And why that was in my head, I don't know, but that is what the devil decided to stop me from coming here. But I would still come when I was asked. So I had no idea what God had planned, but I knew it was big. And I came to church one Sunday, and Chip Brim was here teaching. And I can remember him running across the stage, but he said several times, "The pastor you have here is an awesome pastor. And he is a man of God, and he reads the Bible." And so, for whatever reason, that stuck with me, and I decided that next Sunday, even though I didn't have the kids, I was going to come to this church. So as I'm getting ready for church, I put a pants leg on, I would ask God a question. I would put the other leg on, have a question for God. I don't know how many questions. I wasn't smart enough to write the questions down, but I had many questions for God as I was getting ready to come to church. And of course, that week, since I decided early on, the devil made sure to make it hard for me to come to church. One thing I have going for me, I am very stubborn, and I didn't pay attention to him. So I did get to church. I surprised Chris because Sherry wasn't here because it was her time to work. And he was surprised but happy that I came. I will never forget this. As I'm sitting there and worship's over and pastor jumps up on stage and he goes, if you want the service on something, because I don't really remember that, so I guess I don't remember it completely, but get the recording from the first service because I feel that I need to preach on something else. And as I sat out there, that man answered every single question I asked God that morning. So God knew what might get my attention. So I started to listen to Spirit FM and come into church every Sunday, not every Thursday. I was wondering if you're going to catch that, Jim. Every Thursday, not every Thursday, but I did come every Sunday. While I'm listening to Spirit FM, I hear Joyce Meyer preaching. And she's preaching about walking through and not going around the mountain, but going through and just not staying out in the wilderness. And when I came to church, it was the same message. Pastor would be teaching on Mark 11, 23, 24, about having faith in God and telling that mountain to move. And so, not knowing, but God knew that he was preparing me for a trial. And I mean, every time I would hear someone, it was something on walking through, not going around the mountain so many times. So he was getting me prepared, and the word does not tell us, God's word does not tell us that we will not have trials. He tells us that he will give us the strength to go through those trials, and we will go through them joyfully. So I wasn't feeling good, and I had to go to the doctor. I don't like doctors. Nothing against doctors. I just don't like going to the doctor. I wasn't feeling well, and she was doing some tests, and I had my sister. I do have an older brother and sister that live in St. Louis. And my sister was telling me how she has gone to the doctors to get tests ran because and I'm getting close, at the time I was getting close to that 40 range. And when my mom turned 40, she had a massive stroke that left her paralyzed on her left side. But she was told that she would never walk again. And my mom did walk again. But I just had to tell that because I had a wonderful mom, and actually I had a wonderful father. I was very blessed. So I go she tells me I need to get some blood taken. And so I go and get some blood taken, and I never hear from them. So I finally called them, and I said, I took blood such and such day, and I haven't heard from you guys, and just wondering how the results came back. And so the doctor called me back right away, and she goes, did you eat or drink anything before you came? I go, well, I had water when I brushed my teeth, but that was it. And she said, I need you to go take some more tests. And I said, okay. She goes, I think something's wrong. Let's just take some more tests. So I go back in and get some more blood drawn. And she called me right away. Like that day I got those tests taken, she calls me. And she goes, you need to come in. We need to set up an appointment for you to come in. And so we did, and I get there, and she tells me, your sugar level is very high. You have diabetes. It's diabetes 2. And she proceeds to tell me that I need to lose weight, which was a true fact because I was probably about 40, maybe 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And she told me that I needed to change my eating habits. She goes, it's not a diet, it is how you eat. And then she proceeded to tell me that if I sit on the couch, keep eating potato chips, eating ice cream, and doing what I am now, I will probably lose a leg or I will die from it. Yes, it was a little bold and kind of in your face, but she opened my eyes. So I did. I started doing things differently. I started seeing things differently. She did put me on, I think it was 2 or 3 different medications. I don't really remember, but she put me on medications. And I am one who, I'm lucky if I can remember to take my vitamins in the morning. So taking medication would not be a good thing for me. So I asked her, how do I get off this medication? And she goes, well, you keep that blood under 100, and we'll talk about taking you off that medication. And I said, okay. So, of course, if that wasn't enough, I have problems with my insurance company. The insurance company wouldn't pay for the class the doctor wanted me to go through so I can learn how to take my blood 3 times a day and how to, watch what I eat and whatever else that class was supposed to teach me. And the thing was, the class was $500, and I didn't have that money at that time to pay for that class. So what did I do? I did the best thing, and I called my sister-in-law. And I go, Sherry, I don't know what to do. And so Sherry said, we can do it. We can give you the $500. But in Sherry's mind, she was afraid that I would quit coming to church, because I just really did start coming. And she thought for sure this is it, this trial's gonna take her, she's gonna walk out that door and never come back. So the person that my sister-in-law is that she says, yeah, we can give you that money, why don't you come to church tonight and I'll give you it. I know, very tricky, but I did come to church. But I was gonna come to church anyway. But after getting off the phone with her, I talked to my boss, who talked to Human Resources, which came in and told me, you need to call them, you need to find out if there's something else you can do, and well, there was. Of course, God blessed me, and he had me meet with the nurse practitioner, and it cost me a copay, which was $20, which I could afford that. So I still come to church, and I tell Sherry, I don't need the money. And we sit through the service, and then the service was over. And, I've been here long enough that we go in cycles on how we do things at this church. It never really changes. We'll just do service one way with ministry, and then we'll kind of float to a different way, and then we float to a different way, and then we kind of go back to our first way. At this point, they had ministers up here that would minister to you. And Sherry told me to go to Jeannie Crow. Probably one of the best decisions that I made is I went up to her. I know it was on this side of the stage. And I went up to Jeannie, and it's weird because I can think about it now. I never went to Jeannie and said, I want healing. I said, I want to walk through this. I want to get to the other side. I do not want to walk around this mountain, and I definitely don't want to be stuck in the wilderness. So Jeannie grabbed a hold of me, and she started praying to me in the Spirit, and I just sat there. She was just hugging me, and Sherry's standing behind me, and Jeannie gets done, and she looked at me, and she goes, Lord, heal this overly sweet blood. Now, when I came into this church that night, I could just feel a heavy weight on me. But I knew I could get through it because that's what I was taught those months beforehand. But when you're going through it, sometimes you forget what you have heard. And when she said that overly sweet blood, I started laughing. I turned to Sherry and said, "See, I'm just too sweet." And Sherry goes, "Really? That's what you had to tell her?" But as Jeannie got done praying, and she looked at me and she goes, "Angie, I want you to know something. You need to get up every day and thank God for your healing, no matter what." No matter what. And Jeannie told me about when she had a lump on the side of her throat. And she goes, "I would get up some mornings and it was bigger. But I sat there and looked in the mirror and I said, 'Lord, thank you for healing me. Jesus, thank you for healing me.'" She goes, "And then one time it would get smaller and I would just still keep thanking him. And then one day it was gone." So again, she said, "No matter what." So I start taking my blood, and every morning I'd get up and I'd thank him for healing me. Every time I had to take my blood, I would say, "Thank you for healing me." There were times that my blood sugar would be 120 and then jump to 130. I think the highest it ever got was in the 200s, and then right after it, it dropped down to 79. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? And so I did call the nurse, and the nurse goes, "It's not uncommon. You're regulating your sugar, but if it keeps going up and down like that, then we might have a problem." So 3 months go by, and I have to have another doctor's appointment. Go in, get my labs taken, and then go in to see her. And I looked at her and I said, "My blood is under 100. Are you taking me off this medication like you told me?" And of course, I was probably kind of just like that, like a matter of fact. And she said, "Well, we'll take you off that medicine, and we'll see where you are in 3 months." So in 3 more months, I went, and I'll never forget watching that doctor flip through the paperwork, trying to figure out how she could have misdiagnosed me. I have been off that medication and never been on that medication ever again. And I am very thankful for that. Now, she told me my cholesterol was still high and kept me on cholesterol medicine. And then I started having problems seeing. I've always had some kind of issue with my seeing, but I could always see far distance, and I could not see far distance. It was like a blur. So I called the doctor. I went to the eye doctor. He changed my prescription a couple times. Nothing was working. We put me on glasses, and that wasn't working neither. So I sat there and I called up the doctor, and they decided I needed to get a scan of the brain and see what was going on. And so I did. I went in for that, and I'll never forget Dad going, "I don't think you should do that by yourself. I think I will go with you." And I said, "Okay." So I think it was a couple days later, the nurse calls me and she tells me that my scan was clean, there was nothing wrong. And I go, "So my brain is okay?" And she goes, "Yes." I go, "Can you put that in writing so I can tell my family I am not nuts?" And she laughed and we went on. I can remember I was sitting there at the bank, I worked for the bank, and it just dawned on me, it's this cholesterol medicine. So I called the nurse back up and I go, "Could it be the cholesterol medicine?" She goes, "Let me go talk to the doctor." And by chance, she got the doctor where she was eating lunch and she could get me an answer right away. And that doctor said, "Well, we'll try it." And I was off it for just a couple days and my vision came back. And I know that was God telling me, the Spirit of God saying, "Get off that medicine." So, as I'm thanking God, I went to a few services to receive the Holy Spirit. And I never had the language come out, but I can remember sitting in my room and I'm just praying. I'm on the floor and I'm praying and I'm rocking back and forth, and all of a sudden my prayer language came. And that just proved to me that God was with me through this whole thing. So we go a little farther, and I get this postcard, and this is just showing you how much God has blessed me through the years. So I get this postcard, and it's Joyce Meyer's ministry, and they're going to go to India, and they're going to take their partners with them. And it cost, like, by October, you had to have $500 down, and if you didn't, then you couldn't go. I find out later that only a few people actually received a postcard. They ended up opening it to more people because they didn't have the reaction they thought they would have. So they, but I didn't know that until I was on the plane. It was very interesting. I never told anyone about this. I actually threw the postcard in the trash and took it back out and said, this would be awesome to do, but I don't know how I can afford it, because it cost like, I don't know, $3,000 or something dollars to go on this trip. Never told anyone. And so, again, my sister and my brother tell me, I was sitting in service, Sherry leans over, hands me an envelope, and she says, oh, don't worry about it right now, look at it later. Get through the church service, get out to my car, and it dawns on me, oh, I have this envelope. And I opened the envelope up, and I bet you guys can guess what was in there. $500. So she happened to be in the parking lot. Of course, she was still in the parking lot. She is a realtor, and she was doing business still. And so I drive up by her car. She rolls down her window, and I go, do you realize what you have just done? And she goes, no. And I tell her about the trip and needing the money within a couple months. And she told me, I told Chris we needed to do something. I didn't know what it was, and then it came to me. And I just did what I felt the Lord told me to do. And so, like I said, it was a couple months out, so you got that time to think about different things, like how your computer is broken. Maybe that $500 was really for a computer. I would try to turn that computer on, and it wouldn't do anything. It would just sit there. It would not do a thing. I forget why I needed that computer, but I needed that computer for some reason. So here I am trying to decide, do I spend this money on the computer, or is it really for the trip? Well, I decided one day, after many times trying my computer, to try the computer one more time. And that computer turned right on. It worked until I got a different computer from my sister. And then I gave it to someone else, and they said it broke down within a day or two. So I guess the anointment was not still on that computer. So the rest of the money that I received for that trip came from friends and family. I was working out because the bank had a workout room, and it worked best because I lived like 40 minutes away. So if I would try to go home and work out, that wasn't going to happen. So I would go work out right after work. And so I was in there working out with this one girl, and we would talk all the time. And, I have this stuff happen in my life, and of course you just got to tell someone. And I can remember her handing me a check and said, I think you need this, and I hope it gets you where you need to go. And so then I would come up to some stumbling thing where I needed money for the trip, and someone out of the blue would just hand me money. I had, which I think she's watching tonight, Desiree's mom decided to have a yard sale. And the money that I needed, I didn't know. We kind of left the money there after the yard sale and never got it. And then when it was time to go on the trip, I was short a few $100s, and that money was in there. So I was able to go on a missions trip, first missions trip Joyce Myers ever had with her partners in India. And it was the most amazing thing I have ever experienced. It was just amazing. So now we can go back, after all that blessing from the Lord, we'll go back to working in the video room. Diane was done working in there, and we were in this little room over here when I first started. And so, and there wasn't much room in there, because if you've ever seen the equipment we have, it's not small. It could be small now, but we haven't got rid of that table yet. But, hint, hint. You hear me, Jim? Okay. So she was done. She didn't want to direct anymore, and I've been doing it probably a year and a half. I don't know. I was here every service, no matter what service, if there was a special service, whatever, I was here. I would work camera. And I enjoyed it. And Eric Savansky was on sound, and at one point, Pastor put him over both departments because, let's just admit, that equipment needed some help, and he could fix it. I couldn't. So she kept telling me a certain person should be the director. But that person would not submit to Pastor, so it would not be an ideal thing. Yes, she knew how to work the equipment, and yes, she knew what she was doing. She actually did it for a living. I knew it was going to be me. And I kept telling her, no, I don't think she's the person. I just don't think she's the person. So I get a call from Pastor. I was at work, I remember, and it was actually, Diane was actually the receptionist at that time too. So she called me first and she said, Pastor would like to speak to you. It's almost like being sent to the principal's office. So he gets on the phone and he offers me the video department. He goes, will you be the director? You get along with people like you. I don't know if that's so true anymore, but people like you, and maybe you can get some people volunteering. And before he could finish his sentence, I said yes. And the funny thing is, I don't think he thought I would answer that fastly, because he proceeded to tell me, Loretta, I need to pray about this. I'm like, seriously? You just called me and you're going to pray about it now? So it wasn't that long. I think it was the following service, he did come up and say, yes, we want to give you that position. That is probably the most awesome thing that I ever did. By the time I started directing, Alicia started working graphics. So I have known Alicia for at least 15 years now. We kind of based how long we've been in the video room together by how old Michael is, her oldest son. And he is 12, and we knew we were back there a little bit before. She keeps telling me, it was before you turned 40, because I remember when you turned 40. So, volunteering in the video department is just amazing. I have great friends, great people who work my camera for me, great people who work the graphics if Alicia's not here, which the last couple of months has been a lot. Just saying. But It's not actually working the video department, it is actually serving God. I mean, I don't think you guys understand when I took the department over, I had none whatsoever idea how to run it. I didn't know much about computers, but I was fastly learned on that. But Alicia calls me Angelina Jotecki is what she calls me. Something would break down, I would figure out how to fix it. I don't have to do it as much because I have Jim now. But Jesus came to this earth. God sent Jesus here. John 3:16 tells us that God sent his only begotten Son to, or put the text to give up, that's good. But anyway, that God so loved us that he sent his only begotten Son for us. Have you ever thought, if Jesus did not serve God, where we would be today? I mean, that is just mind-blowing. Jesus was on this earth serving. You look up the word ministry, and I think it's in Latin, but I could be incorrect. I don't have it in my notes. But one of the definitions is serve. Ministry is to serve. So you can see different things throughout Scripture, like where Jesus humbled himself and washed the feet of his disciples. That was, if you look that up, you will see that is humbling yourself because that was a servant's job. And that's why Peter probably had a hard time with it. I had Loretta tell me, I don't know, it's been years. She was sitting, and it might have been you in there at that time, Gwen, as the receptionist. Loretta was sitting in there. You guys just got back from a conference, and she said, I would like to see all our volunteers get paid. And I get that. But let me tell you what. I do not volunteer so that I can get paid from it. I volunteer to serve God. That is what we should all be doing. I just, so many things happen because I served. And I really haven't missed too many special speakers. I mean, there's the one time that I already had my plane ticket to Montana, and I was gone. I wasn't staying. I've missed a couple special speakers, but other than that, I pretty much am here doing what the Lord has shown me to do, because I will tell you again, I knew nothing about cameras, video, none of it. It was a God's gift to me. I could have missed so many blessings if I didn't listen to what the Lord was telling me to do. I believe to this day that I am debt-free completely, house, car, everything, and it was 4 years ago, in this month, which happens to be my birthday month, because of the time that I invested in serving this church. I wish I could say I was always pleasant, but Pastor knows I haven't. I have my moments, but it's just hard sometimes. You know, I have Antoinette who told me tonight, Angie, I don't know if I'm going to be able to work all the Thursdays anymore because I'm in children's church. So that means, Jimmy, are you going to pick up the slack for me? I have 2 camera people basically on Thursday. I have Jimmy work one week, Antoinette work the next week, and so on. Judah has helped also, but, you know, just like tonight, I can't work on this day. Well, I already have you scheduled, but no, that was on the 19th or the 18th. Yeah, yeah. The 15th. Thanks for telling me which date. I had it wrong. I think it was last month. This month you were gone on the 18th. It doesn't matter. There are so many people in this church, and we have to get that heart of serving, because it is a blessing. I stand before you and can tell you so many more things, like getting my master's in LCU, and that year that I was getting the master's, it was paid for. And with getting that master's, and the reason I'm up here, because Pastor ordained me as a minister so I can marry my niece. All of this comes from serving the Lord. And the thing that goes through my head with the video department, I will never know how many people I brought to the Lord until I go to heaven. So many people get saved from this ministry. And it can't happen if we don't have sound. It can't happen if someone's not watching the kids so the adult could do it. You know, I have had Gwen tell me that I have a children's ministry in my department because of how many kids I have put on my cameras. And they learn how to serve. I mean, I can remember Gwen telling me, do you realize what you have done for Matthew? He is working with that football team, and he's filming it, and he's doing this, and I believe he's still doing that now in Tennessee. And sometimes you have to pull the people, just like Diane did to me, and say, I need someone to work camera. I have no one here. And literally, most of the time, the way you get trained in my department is, here's your focus, here's this, here's that. Put your headset on, I'll talk you through this. And that's pretty much the training you get in my department. Everyone has a spot. It may be sound, it may be children's church, it may be greeting, it may be ushering, it may be parking lot duty. It could be anything. What we do in this church is going to touch someone who walks through this church and has never walked in. You know, did that greeter greet them? Did the usher show them where they needed to go? All these things are important to grow our church. This is how you grow your church. I am lucky. I get to stay in a dark room and just send it out in the world. And we probably have more people online than we do actually in our church. But we have to reach those people. In 1 Corinthians 12 through 27, which I'm not going to read it, Ben, so don't worry about it. We are told we're one body with many parts, and each part has its own job. I am very fortunate that I knew my job for this church early on. I don't know how many churches can say that they have someone who volunteered for 17 years in a video department. Just saying. It's crazy. But anyway, we all have a part in this ministry. A hand can't be a foot, an eye can't be an ear. So someone needs to do their part so that we could get God's word out there. Of course, you can tell this subject is very close to my heart. I know how much God blesses his people for working in his ministry. Find your place and make a difference. Pastor, I want to thank you for letting me come out of my dark room and speak from my heart, because it is close to my heart. I think this church could do amazing things, but it's going to take all of us. It can't be a handful. It can't be here and there. It has to be all of us. And what could we do? You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that God actually said, they're too much in one accord, I need to separate them. Huh? So let's be that one accord, and let's bring so many more people to the Lord, because that is what this is all about. This is why we are all here.